so much for the opportunity to be here today. March of the Living was something that, like so many in this room, profoundly impacted me. I don't think many people know this story about how I got invited. I'm not sure if I've even told this to Cedric, but this was back in February of last year, around about then, and I was at a Zionist Council event, and the event was called Your Mishpacha Was Calling, and it was a whole bunch of people who'd been in Israel post-October 7, and they were all telling their stories. And I remember sitting there at 8 p.m. that night, and I was like, God, if there is any way for me to go to Israel, let it happen. The next day, I get to work. At 8:05 p.m. that night, 5 minutes after I had prayed to go to Israel, I received an email from a random guy named Cedric asking me to go for 2 weeks to Poland and Israel. Two phone calls later, and I was in. I knew from the beginning that this was a trip that God wanted me to go on. It was so, just the way it happened, I just knew this was going to be one of the most special and powerful experiences of my entire life. And it really, truly was. Since coming back from March of the Living, I often find myself in positions where I have to remind people of the Holocaust, remind people of October 7, clarify why Hamas is evil. And in those moments, when I just feel like the people at my university have lost all humanity, it is the memories from March of the Living, it is the strength from the survivors, it is the bearing witness to what we've seen with our eyes in Auschwitz and in the south of Israel post-October 7 that gives me strength. So this trip has just been so impactful on my life. One of the most powerful and deeply moving aspects of the trip was learning how 1,000 years of Jewish life was wiped out in a single generation. I'd never really thought about it like that. I knew about the Holocaust, of course. My grandmother was a German Jew who fled Nazi Germany in 1938. Many people in our family did perish in the Holocaust. But it never struck me that you could have millions of people who were so embedded in society, so integrated, so established in their communities with history and culture and life. And in one single generation, all that could be lost. But not only for that generation. When you murder 6 million people, you don't just murder those individuals. You murder their descendants, their children, their grandchildren. There are millions of Jewish people, millions, tens of millions by now, who are not alive today because of the Shoah. And that is what hit me. If that could happen then, that can happen now. And so for me, the sense of responsibility to bear witness, to fight against anti-Semitism, to fight for our Jewish community was just strengthened into an iron will because of that. And I think that's something that I will always carry with me for the rest of my life. The other very powerful and moving moments on the trip was when we were driving, I think it was driving out of Auschwitz towards the end of the trip. And towards the end of the Poland section. And we'd been learning about the Holocaust. We'd been learning about just the tragedy of the Shoah. And I had this moment where I opened Instagram and I saw videos coming out of Sydney University. And I saw hundreds of men marching down our campus, waving Taliban flags, chanting Allahu Akbar. And this was while the encampment was going on in May of this year. And I had this moment where I went, if the Holocaust were to ever happen again, it would be our generation that would be the first ones to repeat it. So most of them have never met a Holocaust survivor. Most of them, if they are to ever talk about the Holocaust, it's only to equate it to what's happening right now in Gaza. They don't even believe what happened on October 7. And now they're openly and proudly marching through our campus, chanting genocidal chants, while the vast majority of university students sit back and do absolutely nothing. And I was on the bus looking at this, and I just was, Cedric remembers this, I was just in tears. I was so upset. Because I thought, how can this be possible? How are we back here again? Again. 3 generations, that's it. Within living memory. There are survivors on this bus, and we're back here again? I was so upset. And then we got to Israel. And our first stop after getting off the plane was Sderot, and then Kibbutz Be'eri, and then the Nova Music Festival site. We were guided by survivors through Be'eri and Nova. And that sinking feeling that we are back here again just became so much stronger. A different face, different perpetrators, but the same evil. And seeing the way every house in Be'eri was burned, you could see the bullet holes in the walls, but perhaps the most disturbing thing I noticed in Be'eri was the children's toys just sitting. They were still there. The kids' bikes that had just been left there on October 7 when terrorists invaded and slaughtered their families. And it just struck me, it's the same thing. It's families, it's life, it's culture, it's communities, and it can all be wiped out in a single generation. And so, March of the Living this year probably had a bit more of a somber tone in Israel because of that. But if anything, I think it made it even more powerful. But the sense of responsibility, now we're back to tell these stories and do our bit, play our part in making sure this never is repeated, is now even stronger. Because we do see on our campuses things and shadows of what we did see in the 1930s. We see Jewish businesses being boycotted. We see students being openly anti-Semitic. We have our first openly anti-Semitic political party in the Greens here in Australia in the 21st century. And while all of that is happening, we have Israel that is under attack from 7 sides, and the world doesn't seem to care. So this March of the Living was, I think when I look back on my life, March of the Living will be one of those pivotal points that shaped me so fundamentally into who I am today. And every time I'm at uni, every time I'm on the news or Instagram, wherever, there is not a single time that goes by when I don't think about what we saw on March of the Living. I don't recall the stories of the survivors and their descendants, and it doesn't give me strength. And one of the things that really also gave me strength was Cedric. And his years, I never realized you were a volunteer until we got on the trip. And I was like, hold on a second. Years of service, years. And a great personal cost. And being an advocate and an ally, especially when you don't have to, it comes at immense personal cost. I've lost countless friends, countless childhood friends, family friends, it's a lot. But I always think about you, Cedric, because your act of service in preserving the memory of the Holocaust and in giving me this life-changing experience was all at personal cost. You didn't have to do any of it, yet you did. And so I always remember that and try to channel that when it all feels like it's too much. I go, no, Cedric did it, we can do it. So thank you so much.